Good morning, Bulldogs. Welcome back. We are going to be getting into fiction quite a bit the 6 weeks, as I mentioned yesterday. So today we are going to be working with our notes, and you should have already accessed them. They are shared on Canvas, and they look like this, and then it's kind of like a fill in the blank. Okay, so how are you going to do that? Well, you're going to add text boxes, or you're going to highlight, anything like that, okay? So I'm going to share, and I'm going to show you the same presentation that your classmates are seeing in the class. Okay, when my computer can cooperate. Okay, so first, fiction, the first sentence there, the fiction is a style of writing that tells a story that can include some facts. It can be inspired by facts, or it can be completely made up. Okay? And that is the only one that is not on these slides for you to copy down. Okay? So there's going to be several types of fiction that we're going to be learning about, and we're going to cover that today. Okay? So your types of fiction. Okay? First, you have a novel. That is a long work of fiction that contains a main plot along with one or more subplots. That's small happenings going on. It's not part of the big picture. And it also includes major and minor characters. Okay. One example of a novel is Divergent. If any of you have read that, there's a big plot going on, but there's a lot of little things too. And it's got your big characters and it's got your small characters. Everyone has a role. Okay. We also have a short story. This is a very brief work of fiction that contains only a main plot and one or two main characters, and it's going to have one important setting. So it's just very to the point, one of each. So a good example of that is The Treasure of Lemon Brown or Rikki Tikki Tavi. Okay, those are just some examples. Okay. You've got science fiction. I know I've got some kids that love science fiction. That is going to be a fiction piece, fake, totally fake, based on imagined future science or technological discoveries and advances. Usually it's going to portray space, time travel, environmental change, or life on other planets. A good example there is Star Wars. Usually science fiction is going to be time traveling, living in space, living underwater, anything like that, something scientific. You've got realistic fiction. These are stories that could actually happen. The setting is real, people are real. It could be in a believable setting, but it is totally made up. So a good example there is Wonder. Now, that was totally made up, but it could happen, okay? So that would be realistic fiction. Okay, you've got historical fiction. These are stories that contain fictional characters in a real time period of history. So if you've ever read Number of the Stars, that was made up characters taking place during World War II. Okay, so fictional characters, real time period, that's how you can make that connection there. We've got a few more types to get through. We've got a mystery. This is a fiction story about a mysterious event. And that event is not going to be solved until the end of the story. To kind of keep you turning the pages, keep you in suspense. Okay, good example of that one is The Maze Runner. We've got fantasy. This is a fiction that is set in a make-believable setting, and it has magical characters. So, good example there, Harry Potter. And some of these novels can fit into more than one type of fiction, more than one genre. But these are just some easy examples for you to think of. Oh, that's a fantasy, so couldn't this one be fantasy too? Because you can find some similarities there. Okay. Fairy tales. That is a type of fiction in itself. So it's a fiction story that includes impossible elements. It's going to have talking animals, magic powers. You might have a dragon, anything like that. So my favorite example, Cinderella. You could also use Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, Beauty and the Beast, like that, okay? Okay, last part that we are going to go over today is the elements of fiction. So what does a fiction piece have that isn't in some other pieces? It's going to have a plot, okay? Your nonfiction doesn't have a plot. Your fiction does. It's going to have your exposition, your rising action, your climax, your falling action, and your resolution, okay? It's also, the element of fiction is there's going to be some characters, and you can have some characterization and traits to identify each of those characters, okay? You're going to have a specific setting, and that could be made up, that could be real, but it's going to be a specific setting, okay? Now, can there be a setting in a nonfiction piece? Absolutely, but you can have a nonfiction piece without a setting. You can't have fiction without a setting, okay? You're going to have different points of view in fiction. You could have fiction written first person, second person, or any of the third person. It can have any point of view and still be fiction. Okay? Also, your element of fiction, you're going to have a theme in a fiction. You're going to have a main message that the author wants to share with you. And we're going to be getting more into theme in the coming weeks, but you need to know that that is an element of fiction. Okay? So, yes. We're going to go ahead and do the elements of fiction covering the plot so that you can get this covered. So, a plot is a made-up series of events related to a central conflict or struggle. So, it's everything in that plot is going to relate to your climax. It's all going to happen. Okay? It introduces the conflict, it develops the conflict, and resolves it. Even in a mystery, the problem gets resolved. Okay? So, you have your typical plot outline. You have your exposition. This is what happens at the beginning of the story. You have your setting. That's going to be your time and your place. You have your rising actions and conflicts. That's the main stuff. That's the main events that happen before the climax. Then after the climax, you have the main things that happen called the falling action. Okay? And after the falling action, then you've got your resolution. How does the story end? Happily ever after? Do we have a cliffhanger to get to a sequel? What's going on? Okay? So that will cover your plot. Okay? So let's get into plot development. Your exposition is going to be your introduction. It's going to be the beginning of the story. It's going to talk about your characters and your setting. Okay? Your rising action is the conflict. It's the introduction to the conflict. It's the first events leading up to the big issue, the big bang. Okay? Your climax is the turning point. So this is where it's almost dinner time. You don't want to put the book down. Your mom tells you to go wash up for dinner. You do not want to put that book down because you're at that point in the story where you just cannot close the book. That's probably your climax. The climax is going to be the turning point. You don't know what's going to happen next. It is just the moment you have to finish reading. Your falling action is going to come after your climax, and it's going to show how the character is making it through the climax. How is the character going to solve the problem? Okay. And you got your resolution, like I mentioned, that is the end of the story. That is, the problem's gone, and now what? Do we have another problem? Or are we all good? Are we living happily ever after? Okay. All right. Now, fiction. We're going to talk about fiction real quick with characters. Characters are going to be the people or animals that take part in the story. Remember, fiction is fake. It can have to do with animals talking, animals doing things. Okay? You've got a protagonist and an antagonist. The protagonist is going to be your most important good guy in the story. Your antagonist is going to be the one that has a problem with your protagonist. Antagonist is fighting. Antagonist is the problem. Okay? You've also got some major characters and some minor characters. Major characters are the ones that are going to play a big role. They're going to be the ones to help the protagonist or to provide for the protagonist. And then your minor characters are just going to be the filler pieces. Maybe somebody walking down the street or a customer in front of the character in the candy line. But they're a character, but they're minor. Okay? Okay, your setting is going to be the time and place and event in which the story takes place. It can be real or made up. But remember, the setting covers the time and place. So they're both important, okay? So you're going to need to know where, geographics. You're going to need to know, is it in a particular building? Anything specific that'll help me picture where you are in fiction. Time period, this is very important, especially in the historical fiction pieces. I need to know what time period we're in, okay? And some of your setting could have to do with the cultural, social, or economic conditions. Great Depression, Civil Rights Movement. Those are conditions, not times, okay? And it helps to establish your mood created by the reader, by part or all of the story. So they're very important to keep you up to date on your setting, okay? And for your point of view, this is where I'm going to stop, and you're going to fill in the point of view section because we've already talked about that a lot. And you've got notes. You've got your the notes that you have in your binders or saved on your computer should be that orange piece of paper, and that has the first person, second person, and the three third persons. So I want you to go through here and fill out the information about point of view and pronouns and all the information for first, second, and thirds. Okay, and when we pick up, when we come back, we're going to start with the element of fiction, talking about the theme. Okay, so make sure you get all the way through there. Okay, if you have any questions, just reach out. Have a good day. Bye.